then, I think I'm not going to do this resolution tonight because I just want to share with you guys item 2 before we get started. I went to the Special Education Legislation Forum last night that we're co-sponsoring, and the CEC is running in conjunction with CB2. So they're the main people on it and the ones that are organizing and coordinating. I'm just helping. They have been phenomenal, these forums. I have learned so much about our special ed situation in New York, and it is not a good situation. We are teaching dyslexic children through strategies that are not effective by all of the experts. And we are pushing to have all of our teachers trained in Orton Gillingham that are going to be working with dyslexic children. And we're also advocating to have the first freestanding learning disability school for kids with dyslexia at Bleecker Street, which looks like it's going to happen. It's part of the NYU development, for those of you who have been following that. So Ramesh, I think, printed everything out for you.
Yeah.
Did you?
Jen.
Oh, Jen did?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do, seeing that the bills are lengthy and there's a lot of them and we don't have a really good turnout and we have a short meeting, I'm going to talk to Tammy about new business if this is going to Albany for a vote before the end of March. I wasn't able to get an answer on that today. If this is the end of April, then I'm going to postpone it so that we can have a healthy discussion in the April meeting and pass a well-fleshed-out resolution that I'll walk in the door with. I think that's going to be more prudent than trying to push it today. But I would like to make a resolution about passing these bills. And, the state has to come up with $100 million, and that's a drop in the bucket. I also didn't understand how much money we have available to us in New York State for special education that has not been tapped into, which was very disappointing.
Is there an explanation why it hasn't been put to use?
I think if you were to ask my opinion after listening to this panel last night, they're estimating 20% of the population has some level of dyslexia. The direct ties to incarceration were moving, to say the least. And the success rate, depending upon when they catch them, either at kindergarten, 2nd, 4th, 7th, and 10th, were the grades that they compared, the outcome is less good as you move across it. So that all of the statistics are there, and I think what's happened is they don't think they can afford it. And so they've pushed back on the screening. They pushed back on even taking it as Wendy knows, as a disability category at all until a year ago. And now that they've admitted it, they make it as hard as they could possibly make it to get support for your child. So we've been able to find, and I think I announced this at the last meeting, but I'll announce it again because it's going to go up on our site. We have pulled together a lot of resources for parents that include low-cost neuropsych starting at $500 through teacher training programs, doctorate programs at like Mount Sinai, all the big hospitals. So we have lots of those resources available. We have places that do bridge loans for people who are trying to put their kids in one of the expensive learning LD schools. There's Bob.
Hey.
So all those resources are going to go up on our website, but in the meantime, they're available upon request from the office or from me. I have them in a series of links right now. And so until we can embed them, please spread the word if anybody needs help to reach out to me, and then we can also put them on the list for these forums. We have several more that we're doing one a month, and they've been incredible. So these bills are about, for those of you who had a chance to look at them, they're about supporting teacher training, getting them all trained in Orton Gillingham, supporting the freestanding school, passing the legislation about changing the categorization of learning disabilities, and others. There's like 6 of them. We have Deborah Glick is pretty much on all of them. And we are rallying, of course, to get Kavanaugh and Yuleen on these as well. So we have to move really quickly. They've been just recently introduced, and it's going right to Albany. So
So is the whole language approach in the early grades, and some principals believe in the whole language approach versus, as we know that doesn't work for dyslexic kids, is part of this bill to strongly discourage principals and teachers from using whole language
I think
in the
that,
early grades to when you're teaching reading? Because that's the biggest frustration for me is that, once your kid is diagnosed with dyslexia and you see the books that come home, they, this is the meadow, this is the stream, this is the window, you think there's nothing, and no matter how many times we speak about it,
right,
they're like, well, no, this is the program it's very successful, it's highly rated, it's award winning, it's Teachers College endorsed.
right.
If I heard about Teachers College one more time, I actually think Teachers College is where we should start. That's
Yeah.
the biggest problem.
Well, I think
They are putting out generations of teachers that don't believe in phonics.
I think it's actually, I think it's going to take care of itself, because when they instill that different kind of teaching, they will no longer be able to uphold that logic. Does that make sense? So,
I just think that there's so many people trained in it and they believe in it, and they don't realize how many parents are spending thousands of dollars to privately, their test scores are so good because we're all.
well, I think they
that's
do
why they're so
realize it,
good.
but they have to be on board with what they're told to be on board with. I
Right.
mean, a DOE employee is, you're not going to hear them contradict the DOE.
You and I both know that.
So-
but I think that should be part of this, is that there has to be a real, insert the,
Well, that's the training part. I mean,
Right.
that's right here in this bill number. The early screening is that one. Establish a school's dedicated literacy classes for teachers to include the structured multi-sensory approach. So the teacher training, if the whole goal of this initiative is to have any teacher that is working with a dyslexic child only be using the Orton-Gillingham method, period, end of statement, which is and a multi-sensory approach. All other forms of teaching children are going to be gone to read
Okay.
because they're a failure. And even what they're going to put them through in addition to Orton-Gillingham is courses in the science of reading, which sort of is the underbelly of Orton-Gillingham. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating this, but for those that didn't hear, this was pretty powerful. When we were leaving, they said, because they were saying, yes, but for that percentage of kids, and they're like, no, we should be teaching all children to read in the classroom. So this goes for schools that just have an ICT section. The whole class will learn it. The whole school will learn Orton-Gillingham because it benefits 95% of the classroom in terms of learning how to read. It's a better reading method, period, in addition to being the best reading method for dyslexic kids.
and it's like
So-
Singapore math,
Yes.
or in that vein, is for learning math.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing, is that we know what works and doesn't work, and yet if you look around in New York City
They're
public
still
schools,
using that other
they're still
new
using
math.
a wide variety of math and reading programs.
Right.
There's no standardization school to school, and I think it's going to be really hard to get people to stop hiring the Aussie training program, and some of these others that the PTA at 150 paid for many years ago that I
Right.
was screaming about, because I was like, we should not be spending money on this.
Well, we used to, the schools are able to, if they prove that they can be successful, they're able to buy their own curriculums. That has also been a problem for this reason, and I think that this legislation is going to override that too.
Okay,
So when it comes to reading, it's going to be all bets off.
that's good.
And that's what they're shooting for, yeah.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I know some parents that have kids in first grade, my son's in first grade,
Mhm.
who don't really know whether or not their kid's dyslexic. They might have some slight suspicion because they're suffering, but
So one of these
they're
things
not
is the
sure how to
pilot
do that
program.
testing or how, what-
So we're piloting at 19 schools right now in kindergarten. PS 234 is the only one downtown that's piloting yet, right now. But one of these bills is about screening at every school in kindergarten. So,
Tell them to get privately evaluated as soon as possible.
yes, if they're not doing it at your school, you can do that, and definitely check our website for the lower cost evaluations.
You won't hear it from the school.
So-
Definitely,
And you won't
because-
hear it from the teacher. Even though the teacher loves your child and loves you, they're not allowed.
They're not allowed to tell you, and then the evaluation that they give you at the school level is not a
They're not
full
allowed to tell you.
evaluation.
Backwards, because
I
then
know,
if you
but
don't
it's
have
just-
the information, how do you?
It's just trust us on that.
Okay.
They're married to doing things in a less expensive way, an easier way. And now we are pushing this envelope. It's going to be very painful for them because they're going to have to restructure everything. But they actually do have the money, and they can do it, and we need to
great.
stick with it.
It's great, wonderful.
I would estimate it's going to take about a year and a half, but for somebody else's kids, this is going to be awesome.
That's good,
And if your child's in first grade, it's going to be awesome.
that's good.
Okay, so that's my report on that. Our new Amsterdam library. Oh, hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, would you like to, I'm going to introduce you, Sydney, and can you, and
Sure. So I'm from NYPL. We are here, we're government relations. This is Amber, my colleague. And so we're here just to, kind of do a soft launch or tell you guys when the New Amsterdam Library will open, which is at the end of April this year.
good.
Great.
So we're very excited. I know a lot of people have been waiting for it kind of like with anticipation, so we're just happy to kind of bring that
How long
announcement.
was it closed?
I think for like 2 years.
Was it a
Felt
renovation?
longer than that.
It was an HVAC and roof repair. So
Gotcha.
it's, the inside basically looks exactly the same,
Okay.
but it's been taking a long time. We worked, of course, with DDC, so we're happy that they can also announce this, and we're just very excited that it's been completed.
That's fantastic. I know that Battery Park City will be thrilled to
Yes.
hear this news.
As well as Chatham Square, I think they're getting quite a few.
Yeah, they're getting a lot of your
patrons
folks.
coming in, yeah.
When,
How is
when,
it being announced, sorry?
that's what I was going to say. How is this being announced?
So I don't think we're gonna have like a press release or anything go out, but we're gonna just do a soft launch. So we may just kind of announce it at the community boards, let the electeds know, and maybe do some additional programming at the branch to open it up to the community.
That's a great
Can you
idea.
put sandwich boards on the sidewalk, just in front of, like, just to, or like signs on the sidewalk? Because I think that that's the thing, is that just even walking by it, it's.
So I've heard that there's some tattered signage that's above the library, so we're going to be giving it a new,
Yeah, that's what I was
fresh
gonna say, it
revamp.
needs
So
something
there
to
will
welcome
be
you.
new signage,
Yeah.
not necessarily at the boards,
Yeah,
but
but
we'll definitely have
something
some
that-
signage to announce, yes,
Yeah.
that will be reopening, so please come by the library,
Okay.
for sure.
That's great.
Okay, excellent. And if there's something that we can do, I thought I was going to have to advocate for you tonight, but it sounds like it's happening.
No.
So that's
Awesome.
excellent
Very
news.
excited. Very excited.
So if there is something that we can do for you, please let us know.
Will do.
And maybe, if you want to come back then too, just to jog everybody's mind right before you do it, we can send out a blast.
Yeah.
And if you do end up organizing some sort of a launch event, we
We'll
can
include you.
support that as well.
Yes, for
Okay.
sure, for sure.
And are there gonna be specific programs for the neighborhood or anything like that you can announce today, or
I
you're still
don't
figuring
know.
that out?
They're still figuring that out. I think probably some children's program they're going to have. That's always exciting, and I know that we've had a really strong children's program
Right,
that's there.
exactly.
So I think they're thinking on those lines, and maybe some adult program, but we're not really sure now.
Yeah, didn't you used to have a movie program too, like from time to time you would show movies and,
I think they do
Yeah.
do movies at that location. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Do you have flyers announcing it or anything like that, or
We will.
soft?
Yeah, we-
Because the senior citizens in our program, we have a senior citizen program,
Mm-hmm.
and the senior citizens at IPN,
Yeah.
they like that library, so that's real. So there's there's one really major senior citizen center in the neighborhood. There's one in Chinatown, and there's one at Greenwich, 310 Greenwich Street, run by,
Okay.
those are the, if you get the community board flyer, I'll pass it along to them for
We'll
you.
definitely do that.
Yeah, they like that library.
That's excellent.
Now, you
That's
know,
good to hear.
on a separate note, I actually attended a volunteer census meeting last
Okay.
night. Harley, what have you heard about the census in the library? Because I know people might come there, because now you have to fill out the census online.
Yes.
Are you getting any
So we
information
have a
about
whole
that?
census team that has been working with our community partners and a whole plan. So we will have a dedicated computer. New Amsterdam, I think because of it was so in flux, we didn't have it as a hub location. But Chatham Square is a hub, so they'll have an additional 4 or 5 computers at their location. They're mainly placed in hard-to-reach hard-to-count communities. But we will have a dedicated census computer, it's a Chromebook, that will be in each of our 92 locations. So patrons can come in, access the form with their QR code, and then just complete the census. It usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete for like an average-sized family. So where we have prepared and we have deployed kiosks that are going to be sent to the community. So you guys should see it soon.
That's great.
Yeah. The kiosk should have been deployed maybe last week, so they should definitely be installed by this week.
Yeah, I think you can actually go on the site, it's live now.
It is
The
live.
My 2020
Mhm.
census.gov or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's 2020 census.gov or something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
That's good. Okay, very good.
So we'll definitely, we can update you with more of our census plan, but generally speaking, by Thursday, you'll be able to go into any library across the city, because I know that Brooklyn Police are also participating, and fill out your census. And a dedicated.
That's a great thing,
location.
isn't it?
It is good.
All right, good. Thank you, Sydney, and nice meeting you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. That's good
And
news.
we're here for you, and just keep us informed.
Yes, we will.
All right, good.
We're excited.
Andrew,
Um,
just tell us how things are shaping up for Little League. If everything's okay?
So Little League's great.
Okay.
Little League, we officially started yesterday, last night. It was warm enough to have our first practices. I think kids will be out there again tonight.
Awesome.
Weather. Over 1,200 kids this year, which is our largest. We've added 8 teams.
Wow.
Which takes us about 90 teams. Still have a wait list of about 50 to 60 kids, which we just unfortunately can't accommodate.
Wow.
We were fortunate that some of the park closures that were anticipated are not happening. So from the field permit standpoint, everything is fine. Next year we might have some challenges, but we have some lead time to figure that out. So Little League's great. That's in great shape.
Good.
I don't know, Pier 40, I mean, is that?
Yeah, but I'm interested in hearing how things are going up there.
And Bob can also weigh in. It's not so much about youth programming, but rather about planning for the park itself and Pier 40 as a revenue contributing asset. So I think everyone's aware that the current act requires that the park largely be self-sufficient from an operating perspective. And the park has a financial projection that basically shows it moving into the red in 2025. So essentially, the costs that they will be incurring with the projected build-out of the park will drain both their surplus and their current and projected revenue stream into the red by 2025. There are 2 assets that are viewed as potential sources of enhanced revenue. Those assets are Pier 40 and Pier 76 for a number of reasons, given their footprint and other aspects. They're deemed to be potential sources of enhanced revenue. Pier 76 hasn't been looked at because it's currently the home of the tow pound. And until and unless that tow pound vacates, there's really nothing that can be done beyond what's there today. So a lot of the focus has been on Pier 40. And you may recall there was a task force that was formed under the auspices of Community Board 2 probably about 3 years ago now. And what came out of that task force was an amendment to, or a proposal to amend the act to expand the permitted uses on Pier 40, which would include commercial office space. There were very tight restrictions imposed upon that development in terms of height, square footage, and other aspects, such that it did not have the full support of the trust itself, because the trust view was it didn't go far enough to generate the revenue it needed. And it was also opposed by Community Board 4 because their position has been they have shouldered the burden of most of the revenue generating activity in the park. And if Pier 40 didn't go far enough to address the revenue needs, it would again likely fall on them to shoulder the shortfall. So the Assembly approved the amendment. It went to Cuomo, and sort of injecting my view here. He ultimately rejected the amendment, kicked it back. I think on the basis of he had an amendment that, or proposal that, only partially addressed the need and asked for an amendment to the act that addressed primarily only Pier 40. So you might have been, is Pier 76 going to be yet another fight that has to be weighed? So anyway, kicked it back, said, I want a plan that looks at the park holistically, and for the most part that meant Pier 40 and Pier 76. And asked for a plan that, to the extent it required any amendments to the act to accomplish this holistic view, that those come back to him no later than May 1st. So what has happened is a task force, this time under really the auspices of the trust, has been convened. It includes virtually every relevant elected official. It includes 4 representatives from CB4, 4 representatives from CB2, 2 representatives from CB1, which are Paul and myself as the waterfront parks, 2 representatives from the advisory council. One is Bob as the current chair of the advisory council, and another Isaac Ostrakhan, who runs DUS. We've been meeting weekly for, I guess, the last 3 or 4 weeks now. Nothing has really changed in terms of the financial requirement that the park be self-sufficient. No one has said all of a sudden the city or state's going to come up with a pool of money that's going to solve for this. So the challenge with this task force has been to identify possible redesign. One thing the governor also said, this is important, either the city's going to start to pay $1 million a month for the tow pound, starting I think December of this year, and if they don't vacate by December of 2021, that will go up to $2 million. So there's a view that there's motivation for that tow pound to now move. So this task force has really been working with the folks who did the design for Gansevoort Peninsula, plus a consultant from HRA.
Landscape Forums is the name of the company.
To come up with a concept for both Pier 40 and Pier 76, and around that potential design concept, will there be any amendments to the legislation that will need to be proposed to the governor? So again, we've been meeting every week for the last 3 or 4 weeks. There's a meeting again on Thursday. We've looked at the financial projections of the trust. We've looked at some, I think they call test fits in terms of what you could do at Pier 40, what you could do at Pier 76. And again, the trade-off is commercial development for more park space. And that's really the community benefit and trade-off. Revenue for the trust, but on both of those piers, ultimately a design that gives more usable park space than what is there today. This has to come to some conclusion in the next 4 to 6 weeks to get it to the mayor by May 1st, unless there's a pushback on that. I don't know if there's anything.
It's pretty much the quandary the Hudson River Park Trust is in. You gotta come up with about $20 million, and that's the issue. How do you do it?
Why is the mayor's office so reluctant to put in for a capital expense budget on this? I mean, it's infrastructure, it's not operations.
The capital monies have come from the state and the city. We're talking mostly about we're talking mostly about operational.
Oh, so it is
capital
operational,
maintenance.
okay.
It's mostly operational. There's another category called capital maintenance, which is quite costly. And that's the real issue of how much, if there was no such thing as capital maintenance, we'd be talking pennies compared to.
So how long can the,
I think that's the biggest misconception about this. The city and state have put in a lot of money for the capital expense related to building out the park. This is all about the fact that the ongoing maintenance, and that includes as well the bulkheads for the purpose of this discussion. And there have been two very expensive and impactful bulkhead issues related to storm surge and other things. And if there's
You
one
mean
thing
ones
that's
they have to
really,
fix or that they have fixed?
they have fixed and continue to be responsible for bulkhead along that 4-mile stretch. So that's one area that the task force has tried to push hard on. And I think the city's coming to this meeting on Thursday to explain ownership of the bulkhead issue. If you were to pull that out, the financial projection would look quite different.
interesting.
Now, is anyone talking about, I know it's a little bit further up, but in the corner of Stuyvesant where the Battery Park City North solution is happening, they have now upped the height that they're going to build for sea level rise and storm surge to 17 feet. So,
Hasn't been a part of this conversation.
And Andrew, when and if this work is done, or when this work is done, because they are going to redo this pier, has anybody projected downtime for the fields?
There's been a lot of discussion about it. No one's been able to be specific because no one's ever landed on a design plan just yet. But in the amendment that was approved by CB2 and went up to the governor, it stipulated any design plan had to minimize downtime at the fields. And the trust has always said, look, it's a question of dollars and cents. A developer can build around a number of constraints. This is one of them. It just may increase the cost of the project and make an RFP slightly less attractive. But certainly the youth sports advocates have been very vocal on that.
Okay. And one other thing that somebody came to me and said is, did you hear the ball fields are going to be reduced in size?
No.
Okay, so,
There's no scenario that's ever been discussed, and that there would be zero community support for any commercial development if it reduced the field size of Pier 40.
okay,
If it doesn't expand it, there's no support.
And
Okay,
also,
great.
the other Pier 76 can also, they're looking separately from Pier 40 to put something there that's useful for
okay, great.
So
And are
just
there,
as an FYI, sorry.
go on.
As it relates to Pier 40, Pier 40 as a athletic field will be more useful than it has been for the next 5 or 6 years because they did actually resurface the turf. It looks fantastic. And they sort of relined the field to make it just more functional and usable. It just really was an open space. Now it's been lined so you can segment different activities. So I think we'll be able to get much more use than we have in the past just by better organization of that space.
That's great.
But one other point we should also talk about is Community Board 1. Andrew, what does the Little League or the Soccer League do at Pier 40?
We both have time there. It's truly the home of the youth sports leagues in CB2, just as BPC is our home. But no, we have
Sometime on weekends?
We do not have weekend time. We have 3 hours tonight, Tuesday nights, and 3 hours Thursday nights, which allows us to have 3 of our divisions and about 3 divisions, so that's probably close to 400 kids. Again, our interest here is as field footprint is expanded, there's an opportunity to secure more time for.
And if I could report for 30 middle school programs, not just ours, there's very little time after school at Pier 40 for Morton Street, which is right down the street, and the middle school programs are, and we've had advocates on CB2, parents in our program, be a little bit miffed at why we can't get any, so.
So I think that's the next battle to really start fighting more actively. The problem is it's a conundrum.
It's a conundrum.
They allocate, and they try and do it within hours that make sense, but they still allocate a fair amount of time for adult, somewhat for-profit programs. But they have to if they need to generate revenue.
Yeah.
But if you were to take those adult programs,
After school?
I don't know the exact
Yeah,
hours,
I think
but,
it's in the
my
evenings,
point-
yeah.
but I could push back the times we use
Yeah.
if we could go later than 8 o'clock. BPC, we go to 9 o'clock. I only have till 8, and then the adults come in. So if more of that field time was allocated for youth nonprofits, which New York City Parks gives priority to, and after school, I think a lot of time would free up, particularly on the weekends as well.
Yeah.
Well, who would that be that we would advocate to?
We should talk to CB2 again and figure out their take on this.
Because I remember this discussion several years ago.
It happens
Every
so often.
10 years.
Yeah. So, let us know how you do on that, and if you want us to do a little
It's
reso
not
or
really the
something.
current time to bring up that issue, but it is current to right?
I think we first need to solve for what's on the table right now.
Yeah.
And there's so many voices at the table, it's not as a straight line.
Mhm.
But I think once that issue is perhaps addressed, we can take this one on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's evident in the fact when they did their task force, CB1 was given not as much, I mean, it isn't CB2, let's be fair about that, but we weren't really given much input as to what Pier 40 is and what it should be. I
Right.
think it's pretty much, the same way we look at the Battery Park City ball fields.
Mhm.
Honestly, I was somewhat surprised we had a seat at the table.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the fact that we also
Tried to
have a
kick
seat
me
at the
off.
table on this, I think is really progress.
Well, I mean, Andrew, look at what you've done for the leagues, and we do spend time up there, and I think it's really important to be looking at these resources, not as a community district, but as a school districts, because,
And for sure, the after-school programs that exist are not Community Board 1 kids.
correct,
They're Community Board 2 kids, they're Community Board 4 kids, they're Community Board 3 kids. It's a mix, and we play teams from Upper Manhattan, teams from Brooklyn that
Right.
use that. And that sort of intermingling of schools is, when I was a kid in New York, that was the most beautiful thing when we went and beat Jefferson High School in football every season.
well, I mean, that is what it's all about, and we don't have the resources that a suburban setting has, and so you have to learn to share, and I think it's, in doing that, different community districts have different needs when it comes to these shared spaces, and so it is important that there's voices at the table. So I want to thank you both, because we just take it for granted that you go and do this, and we
We
shouldn't.
have a full report at the Waterfront Committee also.
Okay. Well, I know some of our parents wrote me and said, I know I'm supposed to go to that meeting to hear about this, but could they do a little quick report? So
I
it
think
goes.
it's important the youth committee stay involved over the
I do
years.
too.
On all field issues.
Yeah.
And, that's, yeah.
And maybe not for discussion now, but as we're having this conversation, I think you should put your flag in the ground now, the Gansevoort Peninsula is for after school.
Yeah.
Seriously, I think
That's a
you
good
should
place.
place that you
Yeah, I
should
gotta
have
remember that. And put that in Microsoft. Yeah, we should
We'll put that on the list.
Yeah. That's gonna be decent size.
It can be very good size.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be not quite BPC, but.
But it's not an insignificant, and that's community board too.
Yeah.
right?
It is, but.
We're working with them a lot on this initiative that I'm working on. I mean, we really are. I mean, the DOE likes to call us Tribeca Village, remember? So I think that, we do have a lot of shared resources. We are in the same school district. And I think it's really important to not be shy about advocating and having that seat at the table. So thank you both very much. And if you do have any other updates like it sounds like you might have some other news next month, just let me know and we can talk about it again.
Well, you'll know about it probably quicker than,
All right.
as simultaneous as we know about it.
And Judith and Devin, that came in late, I just want to let you know, I have to leave tonight because I have to speak at the Church Street 30th anniversary. And Jeff was unable to cover, so we're going to have a short meeting. And the bills that you got from the office, if you could review those, I'm going to be talking to Tammy because she's actually stepping in for Anthony right now with all this virus stuff going on. And I am going to make the decision of whether we're going to try to, if we have to, put together a resolution if they're going to Albany with these bills before our next meeting. So if you could take the time, everybody, just to review them and look at them and send your questions to me. A perfect case scenario is that you'll see them on the April agenda and we'll pass a resolution. But these are the bills surrounding special ed reform that are sitting in Albany waiting for discussion and for passing. And you'll see that we have Deborah Glick representing, and we're going to also be reaching out to Senator Kavanaugh and Yulene to get their support as well. But if you have any questions when you see them, because it's come very quickly, I just went last night to the forum, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask me, because I listened, but I didn't have time to do a comprehensive note-taking thing. So I will next month. So please let me know if anybody has any questions.
On a separate note, I have a request from maybe Little League and Manhattan Youth and others, but this census volunteer thing that I went to, our Community Board 1, our response rate 10 years ago was much lower than the national average, which is shocking. And I have the maps of they break it up by little blocks, so they can really do it like small section by small section, what percentage responded. It's actually, really bad. I mean, some places of Tribeca, it's only like 30%. The financial district, some places just 30%. Yeah, I'll definitely do it more, but April 1st is they want to have like a big blast for like any group, like unions and little leagues and, sports leagues or, any sort of group. They want to have like April 1st to have like this mass, like, send it out to everyone to say like, please respond to the census. So I don't know if you're.
How are people getting the census?
So they're getting a postcard in the mail. And it has a code in it, and so you just go on, and it's all online this year. So I guess if you have...
It's all online?
Yes, it's
to
all online.
To respond to the census?
So if you have a disability or something like that, you can actually get a paper form, but for the most part, it's all online. So so I think it's going to discourage people even more, probably. It's actually...